All right, everyone, there's someone who's actually running for office right now that, a decade ago I actually kind of liked the way which they did business, but they've changed now and they've become, I think, a total sellout, and that's Dennis Kucinich. He's currently running against Cordray over in Ohio in the Democratic primary to try to become the next governor of Ohio, and there's a less than 50-50 chance, it seems, based on relatively sporadic and thus not entirely reliable polling. It appears to show that Kucinich has about a 10-point deficit versus his opponent, and their voting's, I think, in the next few days, if I remember correctly. So it doesn't look like he's likely to be nominated. But there are some reasons to worry that maybe he pulls it out of his ass, and so if you're in Ohio and you plan to vote in the Democratic primary, officially I endorse his opponent for that position. Because Dennis Kucinich is someone, back in the era when Bush had, fucked up the country, really, he had been a fuck-up. Kucinich was one of the voices. It's like, fairly early on, the war's dragging on, it seems messy and pointless. The government is getting kind of scary with the surveillance and stuff, and that was mainly his focus. He was almost like a left libertarian at the time. And the drug war needs to end, which is one thing I still support him on, and he goes further than most Democrats on that, so give him, again, credit where credit's due on that one issue. He's like, I'll legalize pot if I become the governor of Ohio. That's a great idea. Of course, Ohio tried to do that and tried to corporatize it because, it's Ohio. Here's the thing. Dennis Kucinich's new platform, though, has two major platforms, it seems. If you look at his social media accounts, there are two things he fixates on. One is, hey, welfare and more taxes to pay for more programs, which is like standard neoliberal tripe. It's to buy votes, basically. It would be illegal to give someone $100 to vote for you, but it's perfectly legal to proclaim that you want to steal other people's money and give it to them if they vote for you. I find that a little bit odd. We need a constitutional amendment to cap the tax rate in this country and in a state level and stuff too, and reduce the cost of regulations. It'd be a wonderful thing. But he's trying to cast himself as the progressive Donald Trump. That's not really a progressive platform. That's just standard liberalism. And then he goes off into gun la land and he's like, oh, well, we need to ban those assault weapons. It's terrible stuff. Again, so you want to pander based on a wedge issue, one that's slowly losing steam, thankfully, and it always does. Because people are realizing you are wrong. You're fixated on a tiny minority of all shootings and all violent crimes in the United States, a declining over time total that spiked during a period when we had substantially more gun control than we have now. So Dennis Kucinich does not know what he's talking about. No progressive or liberal that I've encountered on this issue knows what they're talking about. And the progressive line is ban assault weapons. The neoliberal, limp noodle, the Lindsey Graham style line, is basically universal background checks. The one thing that they can probably get away with making constitutional, properly put into place. Okay, wonderful. So your platform is guns are bad and we need more taxes. Why don't you just fucking be honest with people? Your platform used to be government power is too substantial. Spying is a problem. War is a problem. But, the Iraq war is basically has dwindled off. It's no longer really an active conflict for the most part. Now it takes the form of targeted strikes, hopefully just on ISIS targets. Not 100% sure I believe the Pentagon when it claims this, but that's basically what it has turned into. It's no longer, hey, we've got a 500,000 people running around in the desert. That's the era Kucinich did well in, because that was the big ticket item of the day. Unfortunately, the big ticket item right now is Trump is scary and says non-PC things and where there are too many guns. That's basically what the Democratic Party platform is. By the way, the Democrats should hope Kucinich loses, because otherwise he's going to rebrand the party. He is capable of doing that. I mean, he's on the older side as opposed to the last time he ran for a substantial office. He was trying to become the president. I think he came in 4th in the Democratic primaries there. It was basically an Obama and Clinton matchup, and I can't remember. John Edwards, a dude who cheated on his cancer-stricken wife while pretending to be the religious Democrat. Yeah, have you ever seen this? You can call it the religious Democrats. It's a Democrat who nods and winks at you and alludes to loving Jesus and family values. Really it's an afterthought to them, but they give you a wink and a nudge in order to get the religious Democrat vote. religious Democrats, somebody who will get you to vote for them by talking about Jesus once. It's a really maverick style thing to do within the Democratic Party these days, it seems. Dennis Kucinich, though, is not the Dennis Kucinich that I liked, a decade ago. The Dennis Kucinich that I sort of admired was more like a Mike Gravel, an outsider. He was a maverick in senses that made sense to be a maverick on. Anti-war, surveillance state, police state, big brother sort of bullshit. The Bushite bullshit. Bush hasn't been in office in a long time, Dennis. Obama fucked up the country for 2 terms. Now we've got President Donald Trump. You're not going to be able to run on an, hey, I'm a progressive, I can stand up to Donald Trump platform. The neoliberals will destroy you. By the way, this race is a microcosm of the larger problem in the Democratic Party. Cordray is a neoliberal, a fairly standard dude. He's on some major fiscal committee, I believe, actually. Some major economic committee. He's a career Democrat. Corporate politician. That's basically what he is. Dennis Kucinich, for all of the bad things about him, is the grassroots, progressive outsider. He is far left on actually some issues, which is what most neoliberals aren't. Like, name an issue in which Hillary Clinton was far left. Can you name one? No, you probably can't, because such issues don't exist. Here's the thing. Cordray will probably win. He'll probably get around 50-60% of the vote. Kucinich will be somewhere in the 20s or 30s or something. Kucinich will probably lose. He represents the slice of the Democratic Party that is energized. It's smaller, but it's actually energized. It's younger, it's more energetic, and it's actually on the left, which means it has very little at this point in common with DNC a la Tom Perez. The problem for the Democratic Party is that they're going to have to choose a boring neoliberal candidate come 2020. Don't you think that gives Trump a little bit of an advantage? He's going to bounce around and tweet and make memes and say off-the-wall shit and gobble up the news cycle, and they're not going to be able to avoid it. They know he's conning them. When he says off-the-wall things or purposely makes a spelling error, at this point, all of the media knows that he's conning them. But they can't wean themselves off of Trump's heroin. His tabloid heroin has poisoned the entire corporate press. And it's great to watch because, they were already tabloids anyway. It's just now they only have one subject to talk about. He's running them into the ground, and he's going to outpace them. He can do this for fucking ever. He's been doing it for 30 years. The Democrats have to choose whether they're going to have someone who's actually capable of gobbling up any of the news cycle, which would be a progressive, or a neoliberal who gets the corporate backing. The problem is most of the Democrats in the country still support neoliberalism. There are more Clintonian Democrats than Sanders progressives and socialists. I hate to tell this to the younger Democrats, but you're outnumbered significantly, about 2-1. You're not going to be able to get your progressive candidate. You're probably going to get Trump 2020. That's probably what you're going to see. At that point, maybe then the party loyal, the DNC-ites, will fall by the wayside. You can stomp them out of existence, wash them aside without too much trouble. My advice to the younger Democrats: go ahead, vote for the boring neoliberal. Don't try to ejaculate yet. You have to keep going. You have to keep thrusting if you want to get off at this point. You're going to have a little bit of a problem. If you get your progressive candidate, they probably won't win. They'll alienate the neoliberals. They'll be outraised and outspent 10-1, and Trump will have another advantage come 2020. Not that anyone's going to listen to my advice. I still get called like a white nationalist or whatever by people who have like Karl Marx banners on Twitter. So it's pretty funny. You don't need to listen to me. Just watch my predictions. See what happens. You might find yourself on election night. You might find yourself a little bit disappointed. That's about all. Peace out.